I stood by while my wife nearly ended our son's life. And part of me was glad she did. Reddit confession. Before you judge me, hear me out. Because if you had walked into that room and seen what I saw, you might understand why I didn't stop her. I'm an old man now. My daughter is grown, I have grandchildren, and I've spent years talking about this in therapy. Even after all this time, I still don't know how I should feel. What happened that day has stayed with me for more than 30 years. And it all started with my son. My wife and I wanted him. We planned for him. When she got pregnant, we were thrilled. We imagined family vacations, birthday parties, school plays, all the things parents dream about. Instead, from the day we brought him home, something felt wrong. For the first 13 months of his life, he cried almost constantly. I'm not exaggerating. He cried until he lost his voice. He cried while being held. He cried while being fed. There were nights when he seemed to cry in his sleep. We took him to doctors, specialists, anyone who might help. We changed diets, routines, sleeping arrangements, everything we could think of. Nothing worked. Then one day the crying finally stopped. We thought the nightmare was over. It wasn't. As he grew, it became obvious that he wasn't like other children. He didn't seem capable of enjoying normal things. He didn't laugh. He didn't play. He didn't show affection. The only time he ever seemed happy was when he was making someone else's life miserable. The older he got, the worse things became. Anything he could break, he broke. Anything he could ruin, he ruined. He learned how to make messes and hide them where we wouldn't find them for days. He constantly damaged furniture, walls, toys, anything within reach. As he got older, the behavior became more aggressive. He bit people, kicked people, spat on teachers, attacked classmates. By age 9, he'd already been removed from multiple schools. We tried everything. And before anyone asks, yes, he was in therapy, extensive therapy, psychiatrists, counselors, evaluations, medications, years of treatment. Nothing helped. Nothing changed. If anything, things got worse. Eventually, we had to install locks throughout our home. Not to lock him in, to protect ourselves. We reinforced doors because he would steal knives from the kitchen and use them to damage property or threaten people. When he was 10 years old, he stabbed me. I still have the scars. As he entered his teenage years, his behavior became darker. He started harming animals, starting fires, destroying anything that brought comfort to someone else. Living with him felt like living beside a storm that never ended. Then, when he was 16, my wife became pregnant again. Instead of joy, we felt fear. I hate admitting that, but it's the truth. After 16 years of chaos, we couldn't imagine going through it all again. Eventually, we decided to keep the baby. And if the child showed the same signs as our son, we'd figure things out later. Then our daughter was born. And for the first time, we saw what parenting was supposed to feel like. She smiled. She laughed. She slept through the night. She wanted to be held. She was happy. She was normal. The relief was overwhelming. For the first time in years, our home felt peaceful. And that's when our son got even worse. He didn't seem interested in the pregnancy. But once the baby arrived, something changed. The outbursts became more frequent. The arguments became constant. By then he was 17, and most of our interactions consisted of screaming matches. After every fight, he'd storm out of the house for hours, sometimes overnight. And as terrible as it sounds, those were the only peaceful moments we had. My wife had reached her limit long before I had. She couldn't stand being in the same room with him. The years had worn her down completely. We weren't functioning as a family anymore. We were surviving. Then came the day that changed everything. That morning, my son and I had another argument. He left the house furious. My wife and I finally enjoyed a few quiet moments together while our daughter slept in our bedroom. Then we heard her cry. Not a hungry cry. Not a tired cry. Not a fussy cry. Terror. Any parent knows the difference. The second we heard it, we ran. The bedroom door was locked. It took a few precious seconds to get it open. When we finally got inside, my son was standing over the crib. He had somehow entered through the window, and he was holding a knife. Our daughter was screaming. I could already see small injuries where he'd hurt her. He looked up at us and smiled. Everything happened at once. I rushed toward the crib. My wife reached him first. She knocked the knife away and shoved him back from the baby. I grabbed our daughter. My wife stepped between us and our son. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then my wife took one step forward. Then another. She stared at him, and something inside her finally broke. She hit him. Hard. Years of fear. Years of anger. Years of helplessness. Everything exploded in that moment. She hit him again. And again. I could have stopped her. I didn't. I just stood there holding my daughter. Watching. For the first time in his life, my son looked genuinely afraid. He begged. He cried. He screamed. And still, I didn't stop her. After a while, I turned away. I took my daughter into the kitchen. I cleaned her wounds. Held her until she stopped crying. And waited. Eventually my wife came out. Her hands were swollen. Her face was covered in tears. We sat across from each other in silence. Finally I asked, "Is he dead?" She looked at me and said, "I hope so." And the worst part? I understood exactly how she felt. Because part of me felt the same way. Later, I checked on him. He was alive. Badly hurt. But alive. Neither of us knew what to do anymore. The police. An ambulance. A hospital. None of it mattered. We were simply done. Done being afraid. Done surviving. Done sacrificing our lives to his violence. So we moved into the basement apartment of our house and separated ourselves from him completely. Weeks passed. Eventually, he disappeared. And he never came back. The last time I ever saw my son was lying on that bedroom floor. That was more than 30 years ago. I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's alive. I don't know if he ever changed. Part of me hopes he did. Part of me hopes he found peace and became a decent man. But another part of me remembers the terror in my daughter's cries that day. And if he remained the person I knew, then I only hope nobody else suffered because of him. I've carried guilt ever since. Not because I hit him. I never did. But because I stood there and watched. I could have stopped my wife. And I didn't. Even now, after all these years, I still don't know whether that makes me a terrible father, or simply a broken man who had finally reached his limit. What I do know is that my daughter survived that day. She grew up, built a wonderful life for herself, and gave me 2 granddaughters who bring more joy into my life than I ever thought possible. When I watch them laugh and play, I sometimes think about how close we came to losing everything. Maybe that's why I still struggle with what happened. Not because I miss my son, but because I miss the son I thought I was going to have. The little boy my wife and I dreamed about before he was born. The child we spent years trying to help. The child we never really got to know. Maybe that's what hurts the most. Not what happened that day, but the fact that long before it happened, we had already lost him.
I hate my brain-damaged sister. Reddit confession. I can't believe I'm actually typing this out. Writing it down somehow makes it feel a lot more real. And before anyone says it, I already know what you're probably thinking. I know these feelings make me sound like a terrible person. About a year ago, my older sister, who was 27 at the time and a widowed mother of 2 boys ages 8 and 5, made a decision that changed all of our lives forever. Despite multiple warnings from people around her, she got heavily intoxicated and decided to drive home anyway. She ended up crashing her car into a rock embankment outside our town. The injuries were so severe that she had to be airlifted to the ICU. She spent weeks in a coma, and when she finally woke up, she was in a vegetative state. Over the past year, she's made very slow progress. Every small improvement feels like a miracle to my parents. But if I'm being honest, every improvement comes with feelings I hate admitting. 'Cause of that accident, my entire life changed overnight. I had to quit my job, leave my friends behind, move across the country, and move back in with my parents. Not because I wanted to. 'Cause somebody had to help. Somebody had to take care of my sister. And somebody had to help raise my nephews. I love those boys more than anything. None of this is their fault. But I've never wanted children. And I definitely never expected to become a parent figure because of someone else's choices. My sister isn't the person she used to be anymore. Mentally, she's closer to a child than an adult. She argues over the smallest things. She cries over almost everything. She can't cook for herself. She can't read. She struggles with memory loss. She's partially paralyzed on her right side. She has aphasia and a long list of other complications that make everyday life incredibly difficult. As her caregiver, I see all of it. Every single day. What hurts the most is hearing her tell me how happy she is to be alive. She smiles and talks about how lucky she is to have survived. And every time she says it, there's a part of me that wants to scream. A part of me that wants to ask, did you think about your boys before you got into that car? Did you think about mom and dad? Did you think about anyone besides yourself? Her children are struggling. They already lost their father. Now they have a mother who isn't really the same person anymore. My parents are spending what should have been their retirement savings on treatments, therapy, and care. I can literally see the stress aging them. Every year feels like it's taking a bigger toll on them. And through it all, my sister smiles. She doesn't fully understand the damage that one decision caused. I know she didn't ask for a brain injury. I know she isn't doing any of this intentionally. But the resentment is still there. And that's the part I'm ashamed of. I don't treat her badly. I still sit with her. I tell her stories. I laugh with her. I help her. I do everything I can to make her life easier. But every time I look at her, I'm reminded of what happened, of what was lost, of how many lives were permanently changed. And sometimes I hate myself for the thoughts that follow. 'Cause the truth is, part of me wishes she hadn't survived. I've never said that out loud before. And I never will. I love my sister. I always will. But I also carry a deep resentment toward her for the choice she made that day. Maybe that makes me a horrible person. Maybe it just makes me exhausted. Either way, that's my confession. Edit. For those wondering, I'm female. Some people have said some pretty harsh things, and honestly, I understand why. I already feel awful about having these thoughts, so there isn't much anyone can say that would make me feel worse. To everyone else, thank you. I've read every comment and truly appreciate the support, advice, and feedback. A lot of the medical, caregiving, and financial suggestions are things I'll be discussing with my parents. Hopefully some of it can help make this situation a little easier on all of us. Thank you again. Much love.
My best friend destroyed my life. So I got the last laugh. Reddit confession. I get a lot of spam and scam calls. Whenever one comes through, I'm always polite. I tell them, sorry, this is my work phone. I'd be happy to talk, but you'll need to call me on my personal number. Then I give them the phone number of an old friend. A former best friend, actually. A guy who seriously screwed me over a few years ago. So now, whenever telemarketers, scammers, or spam callers ask for another number, they get his. Welcome to spam call hell. Now for the backstory. I had known this guy practically my entire life. We were best friends for 16 years. For about the last 5 years of that friendship, we constantly talked about starting a business together. It wasn't just some random idea either. It was our dream. Then one day he moved about 5 hours away. A while later, he called me sounding excited. He told me he'd finally found the perfect business opportunity for us. The opportunity we'd been talking about for years. I was all in. I packed my bags, convinced my girlfriend, who is now my wife, to come with me, and moved to an area where we knew absolutely nobody. No friends, no family, no job opportunities lined up. But it was our dream, so why not take the chance? We signed a lease together, moved all of our stuff into a shared house, started getting settled. Then the very next day, everything changed. He sat me down and casually told me he'd been working on a different business behind the scenes. Apparently, it was starting to take off. And because of that, he wasn't going into business with me after all. No warning, no discussion, nothing. Just like that, the entire reason I had moved there disappeared overnight. Honestly, it hurt. A lot. But he was my best friend, so I tried to move past it. I stayed, built a life for myself, and tried to make the best of the situation. Over the next couple of years, though, he started changing. He fell in with a new crowd, started partying more, and little by little, he became someone I barely recognized. He'd make comments about how I'd done nothing with my life, how I was becoming a loser, how I wasn't going anywhere. Every conversation seemed to come with some kind of insult. I was furious, but I never really let him see it. Then came the final straw. After months of planning, I organized a weekend gathering with all of my closest friends. The entire purpose of the weekend was to propose to my girlfriend. It took a lot of coordination to get everyone together. I spent days preparing food from scratch. Everything had to be perfect. And thankfully, when the moment came, she said yes. I was over the moon. It should have been one of the happiest nights of my life. Instead, my best friend decided to invite a bunch of his new friends over. People I didn't know. People who weren't invited. They completely crashed the celebration. They took over the house, helped themselves to the food I'd spent days preparing, and treated the place like it was their own. The food I had carefully planned for my guests was gone in no time. Then, after most of it had been eaten and the party had already been turned upside down, they decided they were all going out to a bar, my best friend included. So they left, leaving me with the mess. Leaving me with guests who barely had anything left to eat. Leaving me to clean up after everything. I didn't tell him how angry I was. Instead, I acted like everything was fine. I let him believe we were still best friends. I even let him think he was going to be my best man. Eventually, our shared lease ended, and my fiancé and I moved into our own place. Still, I kept up the act. I let him think he was still part of the wedding. Then invitations went out. Everyone got one. Except him. When he asked about it, I told him it was probably lost in the mail. As the wedding got closer, I started talking to him less and less. Fewer calls, fewer texts, less contact, until eventually, nothing. Complete radio silence. No explanation. No final conversation. No closure. I wanted him to spend the rest of his life wondering what happened. Wondering why his best friend suddenly disappeared. Because after everything he had done, I didn't think he deserved an explanation. And honestly, I still don't. So now, years later, whenever a spam caller asks for another number, I politely give them his. It's harmless, maybe a little petty, but every time I do it, I can't help but smile. Because somewhere out there, he's probably wondering why he gets so many spam calls. And he'll never know it's me. One thing I should clarify. There were plenty of other issues between us over the years, and I did call him out on a lot of them. The problem was that every apology sounded the same. It was always something like, "Yeah, that's my bad. But you did this, so I'm not really wrong either." Nothing was ever truly his fault. There was always an excuse. Always a way to shift the blame. Eventually, I just got tired of it. And that was the end of a 16-year friendship. I lied to everyone for 20 years that I'm Jewish. I'm not Jewish. Not even a little bit. Reddit confessions. If you asked me detailed questions about Judaism 20 years ago, I couldn't have answered a single one. And yet, everyone in my life believes I'm Jewish. It all started in 11th grade. My family moved from California to a small town in the South, and the adjustment was brutal. I talked differently, dressed differently, and stood out immediately. I got called every name imaginable and got into more fights than I care to remember. Eventually, I became friends with some guys on the football team. My closest friend was a guy we'll call Greg. Greg was actually pretty chill compared to most people around him, but he was also openly racist and never hid his opinions. One day, I was driving Greg and a few teammates home from school when someone mentioned synagogues. Without thinking, I said I'd been to one before. One of the guys immediately joked, "Wait, are you Jewish?" Trying to fit in, I laughed and said, "Yeah, sure, I'm Jewish." That should have been the end of it. Instead, it changed my entire life. Greg told the football team that his new friend from California was Jewish. They believed him. Most of them seemed to think California was full of Jewish people anyway. The football team told the rest of the school. At first, I thought everyone was joking. Then people started introducing me as the Jewish kid. And somehow it worked. People became interested in me. They wanted to know the new guy. It didn't hurt that my dad had more money than most families in the area, so I could afford nicer things than most of my classmates. Before long, being Jewish had become part of my identity. Whenever someone asked my religion, I automatically answered, "I'm Jewish." By the end of high school, nobody questioned it. Then things got complicated. During scholarship season, my guidance counselor called me into his office and handed me information for a $5,000 Jewish American scholarship. The second I saw the word Jewish, I was ready to throw it away. Instead, he sat me down and practically filled out the application with me. I felt guilty the entire time. Later I heard the scholarship only went to people who were ethnically Jewish, so I figured I had nothing to worry about. Then I won. A few weeks later, I got the acceptance letter. At the same time, I had been accepted to Dartmouth after working incredibly hard throughout high school and graduating as valedictorian. The scholarship made attending possible. I seriously considered confessing everything. I almost turned the money down. Instead, I told my dad. I explained the joke, the lie, the scholarship, everything. My dad stared at me with the most disappointed expression I'd ever seen. Then he burst out laughing. He laughed so hard he was crying. Apparently, the scholarship committee had mailed him a form asking whether our family was ethnically Jewish. Without hesitation, he checked yes. His exact logic was, free college money. He convinced me to keep the scholarship and attend my dream school. So I did. The moment I arrived at Dartmouth, things got even worse. Representatives from the organization that funded the scholarship welcomed me. They introduced me to Jewish student groups, signed me up for events, connected me with a synagogue, even arranged a birthright trip to Israel. I kept waiting for someone to expose me. Nobody ever did. Instead, I made friends. Real friends. I bonded with professors. I became deeply involved in the community. Then I met a girl. A Jewish girl. One day I was sitting in a cafe with the local rabbi when a woman approached me. She asked if I was Jewish. I said yes. She smiled and told me I'd love her daughter. She was right. One date turned into a relationship. The relationship turned into marriage. And the entire time I carried this secret. The guilt got so bad that there were nights I honestly didn't know if I could keep living with it. I constantly felt like my entire life was one mistake away from collapsing, but it never did. I earned my doctorate, spent 11 years in higher education, got a job at a history museum back on the West Coast, married that girl, had a Jewish wedding, had 3 children, and somehow, the irony never stopped. The museum eventually put me in charge of creating a major Holocaust and Jewish American history exhibit, not even remotely my specialty. Yet there I was. Now, after years of working there, the current curator is preparing to retire at 96 years old. I've spent years training under him. If everything goes according to plan, I'll take his position. By every measure, my life turned out great. But deep down, I've always felt haunted. Because everything I have today traces back to a stupid joke in a car 20 years ago. My career, my marriage, my children, my entire life. A few days ago, my oldest son, who's 9, told me he doesn't think he believes in God. For the first time in 20 years, I told the truth. I told him I felt the same way. No lie, no pretending, just the truth. He told me he wanted to tell his mother that he wasn't sure he wanted to continue practicing Judaism. I told him we'd talk to her together at dinner. And suddenly, I realized this might be my chance too. My chance to finally stop pretending. I wasn't sure whether I should tell my wife everything or simply tell her that I no longer considered myself Jewish. But after 20 years, I knew I couldn't keep carrying it alone. Update. So I told my wife everything. Every single detail. The joke, the lie, the scholarship, all of it. And honestly, it went nothing like I expected. She told me she'd suspected I wasn't Jewish from the very beginning. She said she never married me because I was Jewish. She married me because she loved me. She also said she was sad that I'd spent so many years feeling like I had to hide the truth. Then she said something that completely caught me off guard. She told me that whether I was born Jewish or not, I'd spent 20 years building relationships, traditions, friendships, and a family within the Jewish community. In her eyes, that mattered more than blood. We're not going to pressure our children into any religion. We'll let them decide for themselves. And because so many opportunities in my life came from people who welcomed me into their community, we've decided to give something back. We're donating to 3 separate scholarships and helping fund birthright trips whenever we can. For 20 years, I thought this secret would destroy my life. Instead, telling the truth finally gave me peace. And for the first time since that stupid joke in a car, I feel like I'm actually living honestly.